You're listening to Conversations Along the Way, part of the Stoic Mom Project. At the SMP, we embrace the Stoic principle of the obstacle is the way, or that we can take the hardest things in our lives and use them as a way to learn and grow into the best versions of ourselves. If you're here, you're likely a growth-oriented parent of a young person who's choosing to navigate the world through a trans identity. I'm Stoic Mom, a life coach and educator who is also a growth-oriented parent of an adult trans-identified daughter. I've committed to having guests on this podcast who bring messages of healing. I invite professionals who I believe have expertise that can help you regain solid ground and reframe this circumstance in a way that supports you to learn and grow from it. I also invite other parents who found healthy ways to navigate this destabilizing circumstance, whose stories and strategies may inspire you. Today's guest is one of these parents. I hope you can find value in healing ideas from our conversation.
It's fine. You know what this reminds me of? I don't know if you ever saw the show Love is Blind, where they talk to them without seeing them
I
for
think you
like a
told me
week.
about it. You told me
Oh,
about
yeah.
it.
And then when they finally meet, it's like they're with two people, the voice in their ears. You know, the voice
Uh-huh.
that they're listening to is still the person they've connected with. And who's this new person?
Yes,
You have to
yes,
fuse the two people, the two,
yes.
like, I hope by the end of this conversation, your voice and your face will join together. And mine too.
Yes, yes, that's so true. I would say
It's
I'm having a
funny.
similar experience. Yeah,
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah.
Um, well,
Uh,
I really, really appreciate you agreeing to this and taking the time to be here. And I just appreciate you, and I'm grateful for you being
of
willing to
course,
do this. Yeah.
of course. Back at you.
Mhm. Um, you came to me as most of my clients do because you have a trans-identified daughter, right? And
That's
she's,
right.
yes, a young adult trans-identified daughter. You've got, why don't you tell us how many children you have instead of me telling your story? I'll invite you to tell
I
me
Yeah, I have three children,
three children.
and the child in question is the youngest. Yeah, I came to parenting as a mission with a philosophy, very deliberate, very much after a lot of thought about my own childhood and what was missing, and wanting to give them this great gift of this wonderful, intact, warm, connected childhood. And I think I succeeded in a lot of ways. Or we, my husband and I, he's very much a part of it. Um, it was a great childhood. It was a great family life. And attachment parenting was my thing.
Hmm.
Very connected to that, a lot of group affiliations, a lot of things I did, even in a leadership role, connected to all of that. You know, fast forwarding very quickly, just to show you the end arc, I didn't think about what happens at the end of that. We, it's so easy and fun to attach to our children. It's hard physical work, as they say, but the emotional stuff, hey, it's fun. These are cuddly babies. These are little kids who want to explore the world, and we're right there with them. You know, what could be rough about that? You soothe the skinned knees and you hug them, and small problems, small solutions, you know, but we don't think, and nor is it appropriate to, who could conceive of it at that end of the journey at the beginning, what the later part of the journey is like, that what has attached doesn't necessarily have to detach, but the quality of the attachment has to change, or how it manifests. And I had no idea about any of that.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
think that
yeah,
that's a pretty common experience for, you know, the moms that
yeah,
find their way to the Stoic Mom Project. Yes, we were not
yeah.
anticipating the difficulty level of that. I'm wondering if we could back up for a minute and talk a little bit about your family configuration. And you mentioned it's your daughter that is the youngest. She's Can we mention that
Mhm.
she's got two older brothers?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that you really wanted a daughter. That was really important
Yeah.
to you, right?
hmm hmm
The reason I want to lift this up is because I think, well, something that I have observed is a lot of the moms I work with, these trans identified kiddos were in some form or another high stakes, you know?
hmm
Yes, it's something going on, either like me, we had them later in life, or you had two boys and you really wanted a girl, and I know it was important to you to mother a daughter. Um,
hmm
yeah.
Yeah.
But for something that increases the sort of investment level
hmm
um, in that particular child. And you already mentioned, just generally speaking, you were very invested in the type of mother that you
Oh,
wanted to
yeah.
be and the type of
hmm
childhood, yeah, that you
hmm
wanted to
hmm
offer your kiddos. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to.
Yeah. Very big deal. Very big deal. I had a very cataclysmic childhood with a mom who was there and not there, and honestly, mostly not there after I was about 5 years old, and mental illness. And so I literally never attached. I never had a mother figure that I attached to. There were some other people who came along, but unfortunately, not only did it not make up for that, it kind of made things worse. A lot of insensitivity later from people who tried to take that role. And so we try to correct things somehow in our with our children, that we're going to get the script right now, and we're going to show the world how we wish we had been mothered.
There it
And
is. Yeah.
yeah, I could do it with boys, but it goes to a much deeper level because she's the stand-in for me,
Mm,
the girl.
mhm, mhm. I
And
appreciate that. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. And in my work, I'm kind of quasi mothered lots of young women, but again, your own daughter, that it's a girl and that she's your own, that really makes you think like I'm sure, obviously all subconsciously, that you're fixing what was done to you. It's a corrective in a way that you fantasize, even better than with a stranger, that this is gonna reline up the constellations in the sky of your psyche. And yes and no. A
Mm,
lot of
yeah.
no, because this is a different person.
Mm,
I didn't set out to try to use her as a stand-in for me. No, this was all subconscious,
hmm
unconscious. Yeah.
hmm hmm And I very much appreciate the vulnerability it takes to say that, and also that you said it, right? The courage it takes to say that. And I think it's something that a lot of moms in this situation could benefit from recognizing that this is often an attempt to save themselves,
hmm
the relationship, what the relationship ends up looking like, and our high investment in what adolescence and adulthood looks like for our
hmm
daughters.
hmm
Mhm.
I think, and not just moms in our situation, but I think to some extent all parents, but
Yeah.
probably especially moms of all kids. There's something they're trying to rectify. It's very hard to separate yourself. You are definitely, we're all playing house. We grew up in one family and now we're making our own family. What does it all mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also taught parenting, and everyone brings their own bag of stuff from the past. Everyone's got an agenda. They most of the time they're not even aware of it.
And in that agenda is a vision
Hmm.
of what it's
Of
going
how
to
it
look
should
like.
have been for them, what
Hmm.
they wish would have happened in their own lives.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean,
And how
those
and what they're
moms,
going to make
yeah,
happen in their child's life. Hmm.
yes, right, in the family life. And I don't know, at a certain point, you have to reconceptualize and realize your children when they're all under 13, let's say. That's one kind of family life. And then family life with teenagers on board is a whole different life. And then when they're in college, that's a little different. And then beyond that is yet another story. And I'm sure there's other stories I don't even know about. I know there are when they start having kids, if that happens. I mean, oh, there'll be all kinds of triggers, I'm sure. But, these were things in our work together. I was intellectually aware of a lot of the ideas you brought to my attention. But the hard work of applying these ideas to what you're going through, it's like a workbook, you know, to really
Hmm.
now do the work.
Hmm.
And it's just such a shame to be in pain if you don't have to be. And that's why I think I landed on your virtual doorstep, because I was in pain. I think that's the huge thing that all, us moms in this predicament are in this black hole. And, if you have a child who's on drugs or has a medical problem or this or that, there's communal support for you. People understand, they bring you meals, they listen to your stories, but we are like shunned from society. You don't dare tell. And if you do, as I did to some relatives, they may give answers, feedback to you that you don't want to hear. That just makes things worse. So you stay in your own black hole, just it's like acid, eating you alive, feeding on
Hmm.
yourself, researching endlessly, because with the internet, you can research for years, as I think most of us did
Hmm.
once we saw that this was a problem that was here to stay and we understood the nature of it. I think most of us who find our way here are quite confident that we can see what led our child to this solution, as you say, a way to grapple with the culture and their own issues. And so we try to solve it, and we research and blame ourselves and what if, and you're just like circling the drain, going nowhere, losing yourself.
A lot of the work that I find myself doing is helping to view it differently, to maybe see it a little differently than what the research is telling us is going on. It
Right.
is,
Your work to reframe it.
yeah.
Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
and even if we had, let's flip it and say, wow, in my months of research, I found a solution.
Hmm.
That would probably not be the appropriate course of action. She's got to peck her way out of her own shell. She's got to do the work.
Yeah.
She has to figure out how to be her authentic self. As adults, we know this situation has none of the earmarks of authenticity. It's about avoiding problems, about not growing up, about it's not, it's an understandable response in today's culture, but it's not a response that is really going to serve our kids. But she has to be the one to do the work and realize that. So, in our work, I've learned to focus on the connection with her, the quality of the connection, to learn how to trust her, what she needs from me at this stage in her life, because she's learned the lessons I have to give. She's not stupid. That's not the issue. She's learned the lessons I have to give. And if I keep on going, like she's 8 or 10 or 12 or even 16, because she's not, she's in her 20s, then I'm just banging like a mallet on her head and she'll get irritated, rightfully so. So it's not about finding a solution.
And by finding a
It's
solution, like let's clarify that. You mean a way to get her to desist, a way to fix the situation and make it go away.
mm-hmm,
Is that what you mean by
mm-hmm,
finding a solution? Okay.
right, right. And that may not even if there was a solution, then she could just fall into another cult because she didn't do the work. She
Mm,
has to do her own growing up, her own individuating. And this might not be the way we wished it to happen. For,
mhm,
for sure, it wasn't for me. But uh, we have to respond to life as it shows up. And no one gets life on a script and, oh, this will be a comfortable way to move into adulthood with my kids. No, it doesn't work that way. It surprises you, it's complicated. So I have found that at some points it was about giving her some space. At some points it was doing my own parenting journey that, you know, there's something in philosophy like an I thou relationship or an I it relationship. She's not my it. She's
mm,
not my it to, when they're young, you go through a checklist, feed them, clothe them. Are they tired? Are they having a tantrum? What's the right response? It's not like that as they get older, as they become adults. She's not an accessory to my life that I just have to keep happy or keep on the right path. She's not imitating my life. She's living her own life. And that's a really profound truth that you can say 100 times, but until you struggle with that, you
mhm,
don't really understand what that means.
mhm,
It can be profoundly disappointing to grapple with the implications of that her life could look very different from what I imagined for her and my other children as well. And when part of our work, I also looked at my relationships with my other kids, and that was illuminating because I got to bring two older children to adulthood. Well, even that phrase is suspect, isn't it? I didn't, I did, what they had to do to get there so that they could do the work. I kept them safe and fed them and clothed them until they could move into action on their own, and they did. But there were problematic, hard parts. There were parts where I had to learn lessons. Um,
Can you say more about the lessons you had to learn with your older kids? Would you mind sharing a little there?
sure, it's that same I, thou, I, it kind of thing that they're not there to make me happy. And in my little heart, I may have had fond hopes that they would be married at a certain age or have, make me a grandma at a certain age, or that they'd show up to certain holiday celebrations, or they behave a certain way at those celebrations, or that they'd relate to their siblings in a particular way or to their grandparents. And guess what? When they're adults, that's up to them. We've modeled for them, they know where we stand, but they have to go through this period of time where things are murky. Not every kid, I guess some kids sort of glide along, but my interesting, complicated kids had to take interesting, complicated paths to adulthood. And yeah, I'm grateful that they're interesting, complicated people, right? I wouldn't want it any other way, but
Mm,
it's painful. It reminds me of a dream I had at an earlier point in us working together where I dreamt that I was dancing on some rocks and
mhm,
I had like a group of kids I was teaching and I was saying something like, come on, keep moving, keep your feet moving, because if you stood still, your feet would, go on the jagged, sharp rocks. This is, it's not for the faint of heart, bringing kids to adulthood and witnessing all of that and staying connected. It's painful.
mm, mhm,
And you do have to keep moving forward. There are painful things, and we can still enjoy it.
mm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, what's coming to my mind as you're sharing is I'm thinking a lot about the mother archetype these days. You know,
Mhm.
yeah, I think you and I have had a few conversations around this. And especially, when somebody comes into family life with so much commitment to
Mm.
the type of mom you want to be, that is a really strong identification with that mother archetype of caretaking and you're absolutely right. Like when our kids are little, they're actually, I mean, they might be separate from our body, but in those early years, they're still really, in our womb. It is still our role as moms to
Mhm.
ensure that they feel safe and secure and cared for, and
Mhm.
and as you pointed out, for all moms, it's a painful journey to move through that separation and to have recognize what that means. Like again, like you said, we can get it intellectually. It's a very different thing to know it in our bodies and to
Mhm.
experience what that separation feels like and what that letting go demands of us.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the most elemental connection, I would argue,
Yes.
far deeper than our connection with spouses,
Yes.
right? These little people, once little, came out of our bodies. And even before that, we hoped for them and imagined them. And I guess you could say the same about a spouse, but no. To me, it's much more profound,
Hmm.
the connection, the where do I end and he begins, she
Hmm.
begins. It's
Hmm.
complicated, and especially when the stakes were so loaded for someone like me. That
Yeah.
the
Yeah. And it's so beyond even just what we can comprehend. When you say it's profound, um it's nature and
Mhm.
biology and you know deeper than that. If you have spiritual
Right,
beliefs, there's
right,
so much um that factors in
yeah,
to the experience, and that's
yeah,
why we feel it in our bodies. That's why it
yeah,
hurts, right? When we're talking about the pain, we embody that too. We embody the
yeah,
pain.
sure, sure,
And I think we think that maybe if we parent a certain way, we get to skip that part
right,
somehow.
right,
But
right,
wait, I did
yeah,
everything right. A plus B
right,
equals C, right? And then we
right,
learn. What do you think?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just like everything else in our society. Well, we're both kind of countercultural, but everything has been, I'd say, superficialized, and motherhood is one of those things.
Hmm.
And we turn to these parenting books and, what to expect if it's the third month. Oh, your child is pushing up and mine isn't, and oh my God, what's going to happen? And it's very superficial because it and misleading because you trust these accounts and these outside authorities instead of your own intuition,
Hmm.
perhaps your own family, perhaps, the chain of, women passing down things. And we lose our internal authority, our internal wisdom.
Hmm. Hmm.
And none of it's meant to be easy, quick, superficial, just like our children trying to find meaning from this. It's superficial. If I get this operation, if I cut off this piece of flesh. That's not how you affect, internal change, growth. And yeah, it's hard to grow as a mom. I think we had also talked about the meetings, some in-person meetings of moms and some dads in this situation. And people perseverate. They just stick with their position. And I sit there knowing that their speaking is helping them, but I wish for them that they could have a deeper um, growth, development, making meaning of this, how to respond to all of this, and, as I have. And it's just such a shame.
I'm excited to share that this episode of Conversations Along the Way is sponsored by Dream School, which is brought to you by the same three psychoanalysts who bring you the podcast This Jungian Life. For those who may not know, Lisa Marchiano, author of the book Motherhood and one of the founders of Therapy First, is also one of the co-hosts of This Jungian Life. Those who've been following the Stoic Mom Project since its early days in the spring of 2022 know that this Jungian Life podcast inspired me to start paying attention to the symbolism and meaning in my dreams. As a result, around my daughter's 18th birthday, I had a series of dreams that brought me much comfort and peace around trusting both her journey and the foundation we have provided her. I've continued to spend time pondering my dreams and researching the symbols that appear and basically just hoping that I'm, air quotes, doing it right. I finally gave myself the gift of Dream School last fall and can already say it's inspired huge transformation in my life. It quickly deepened my appreciation for the wisdom my dreams offer me and increased my drive to learn more about Jungian philosophy and how I can use it to strengthen my coaching skill set. So not only do you learn how to, as they say, decode the language of metaphor and symbol and harness the power of your unconscious wisdom, if you engage fully in Dream School, you'll learn quite a bit about Jung's ideas around human development over the lifespan, including his concept of individuation, a process that we're all invited to do in midlife that, well, adds more life to the rest of our lives. I could go on and on about the value of consciously engaging in our own midlife individuation process, but I'll save that for my posts on the Stoic Mom Project and my work in helping clients navigate their own unique individuation journey. If you're interested in Dream School and what it might inspire in you, you can use the code STOICMOM15 at checkout for 15% off Dream School tuition. That's Stoic Mom in all caps, followed by the digits 15. Now let's get back to that conversation. I believe you're referring to like a support group, right, of parents with trans-identified kids. And
right.
You shared with me an exercise that you had offered to one particular group. And
yeah,
I'd love to like dig into some of the questions that you used to stimulate
sure.
thought.
Sure.
What you just said made me think of some of these. So, oh yes, okay. I'm actually going to start with the one that you have as number one, which is, do you feel like you're failing your child? Do you feel like you're not entitled to feel good, relaxed, successful if your child has not desisted or detransitioned? And so we probably should first acknowledge that you and I both have adult daughters who have not desisted, right? Both of them still maintain that trans-identified status.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this question I think is such a when you said earlier, you think you find a solution when you're researching. So many parents are out there.
Yeah.
That is what is driving them. That's almost what is getting them out of bed every day, is to find the thing that is going to get their kid to desist, and so that becomes the game they're playing. Does that make sense? And so yeah.
If that's what's motivating you, again, it's that relationship where your child is a commodity and you just have to fix them. Whatever it is you envision for your child. There are many things, and I saw it with my older kids, that they are doing something different from what you envisioned for them at this stage. And you can't fall into that trap. It's a very superficial approach. This mothering relationship, this parenting relationship, they are not our possessions. And especially as they get older, you can, it's when they're younger, you need piano lessons. No, I don't. Well, you're going to try them for this period of time. Whatever it is, we do certain things to introduce them to the world. And, but at a certain point, you can't evaluate who they are in that way. And if you limit your relationship to just like a checklist, and we fell into that trap where, she lives successfully away from home, which is wonderful, because like many of these kids, there's some comorbidities there, some anxiety, some, you know, I won't say failure to launch, but launching in a different way, especially when you look back 30, 40 years, how we went about it. And when we spoke on the phone, it was like a checklist. Well, did you do this? Did you accomplish that? Again, with that big mallet on their head, they know what you want them to do. You don't need to bring that to their attention all the time. Otherwise you get into the what's it called when they resist, the head to
Counter
head.
will. Yeah.
Yeah, that counter will. And you don't want to reactivate that mechanism. You want to keep that safely back in the teenage years. You want to create a different relationship with them in their 20s. But at a certain point, you have to take the oxygen away from it. And if they bring it up, that's one thing, but you can't be focused on it. You can't be thinking about it all the time. All we have is today. And, maybe a big bus will mow us down tomorrow. All you have is now. Is this what you want your relationship to be about with them? No, try to focus on anything else. And you can build up connection and love that way.
Yeah. You brought up something that I think is also really important about taking the oxygen away.
Mhm.
That in many ways we tend to increase the energy and the power of the identity by feeding it oxygen,
Right.
by doing all the research and by looking for the solutions. In many ways, we almost make it bigger and more dangerous and
Yeah.
more powerful because we're feeding it.
Right. Right. And I've seen that with my other kids about completely different topics, other bones of contention. And I look back and I say, I think maybe I should not have focused on that so much.
Which is what you were kind of talking about earlier, if we're going through life, like looking around and comparing,
Yeah.
our kid to others, our kid to our own childhood, our kid
Hmm.
to our vision,
Yeah.
which I think is
Right.
probably the most uh, triggering, right? Emotionally
Yeah.
heightening, is when we're doing that. When our kid is falling short of the vision we had, we're not
Yeah.
looking at what they're doing well or what their growth trajectory is. We're seeing what they're not doing,
Right.
and when
Right.
we focus on what they're not doing, they feel that,
Yeah.
y- you know, and it,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, go
A
ahead.
lot of it is about putting aside our own anxiety and fears. And
Yes.
I think I mentioned to you, I'm reading a book where you journal and you free up your creativity. And the author talks about that there's always this inner voice trying to rip you down and say, that's stupid, you can't do that. It's a sort of negative voice. And there's different methods, but you have to kind of expunge that voice, not listen to that voice, and rise above and identify, when am I reacting out of my own fear and anxiety, and what's the better person I can be in this moment. How can I just, in one of the parent communities, they reframed our role as a lighthouse.
Hmm.
And I think by the time your child is 21, 22, 23, you're and I won't say just a lighthouse. I think it's an important role, but you stand back, you've got
Hmm.
that light always on, you're available, but the lighthouse doesn't have arms and doesn't have a mouth, and just kind of, it's there. If someone wants to come to it, it guides people, the ships back
Hmm.
in, but it's not super
Hmm.
active.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Um, I wanted to bring up this question about what is one thing you beat yourself up about? That's one of the questions that you asked in this community. Um,
Mhm.
what would it take for you to stop? Why is it hard to stop? And I love this question. What do you gain by continuing?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love your to ask
Yeah,
about your thinking and writing that question, like, what are you doing by
sure.
continuing?
Sure. Well, and it comes straight out of our discussions. You gain a sense of control. The most awful thing to think is that we don't have power in this world in general, and all the more so in the one area that we're really supposed to be powerful as a parent, and to understand that that that's an illusory power. It's not a real power.
Mm.
Um, so to stay with those feelings, I'm so angry and I'm despairing. And every morning when I get up, I'm going to do 2 hours of research to find a solution to convince my child to give this up. It's just to give yourself this feeling of mission that you're not powerless. And I won't say we're powerless. We're not powerless, but our power is very different. It's more of that lighthouse energy power, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's not in the same active way that when they were little, we could say, you are taking piano lessons. It's a different path.
And in choosing that power, that to be the lighthouse, I
Mm-hmm.
think when you're looking for what your child isn't doing well, they pick up on that. You see more of what they're not doing well, and it kind of snowballs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in choosing to be the lighthouse, you also communicate trust in your child. And that was another question that you had on your list of questions. Do you trust your child on any level? In what
Yeah.
sense does your child know that?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a big problem for me, with the youngest child. We, in a sense, and the only girl, we infantilized her in certain ways, created a princess. I think many families do this to an extent. We're the baby of the family. They still view them in diapers and, how cute, you know. And the kids compare themselves to the older siblings, even if it's not warranted. They just feel less than because the older sibling is doing this and that and getting attention, because we give a different quality of attention when we see things done for the first time, the first kid who gets their license or achieves this or that. So,
Mhm.
so we created a situation where we did a lot for her because we wanted it to be great,
Mhm.
because we wanted her to have the best. And looking back, I know now I should have started trusting her much earlier to make her own mistakes. It's messy,
It's
but
messy.
that's what a parent has to do. And that also, the last child, you're kind of tired of the messes. You're busy with other things in your life. And you take the easy way out sometimes, whether it's, you just don't have time to teach them to do something. So you just go buy it, or you let them watch more TV. You're not very resistant, whatever it is. Um, and I can say that in certain ways, I'm risk averse, and you want to keep them safe.
You mentioned the mess, right? It's messy.
Yeah.
And I think
Hmm.
it can be really hard for us, especially again, if we're parenting a certain way. It's supposed to look a certain way. It's supposed to save us from some of this pain. But the messiness is really hard for us, I think, to tolerate when we think,
Hmm.
somewhere along the way, we came to think it wasn't going to be messy. And so the
Hmm.
messy, I think, can really activate us um,
Hmm. And I would,
emotionally. Mhm.
yeah. And
Yeah.
also just being tired. You're tired of the messes and you just want to bypass and here,
Mm,
I'll do it for
mhm.
you. I'll give it to you. I'll make it easy for you. But it's also a way of, you're not doing what you need to do. Each child is a new story. Each child needs to make messes. Each child needs to make mistakes and be trusted and work through things. I had to sort of teach myself. to let her make mistakes, to trust her that things would come out in the end. And kind of having faith was another component of this journey, taking the long view.
Mm-hmm. Say more about that. Faith in what?
That if you put you've invested in your child, that they feel your love and that you parented them with attention and care, that those seeds are planted in them and they'll come back around to that it will pay off. But they have to go through some risky parts first, that all cultures, adolescence and longer adolescence as it is now is a time of exploration and risk. And you have to have faith in the long view. And with my older kids, I saw certain changes. One who wouldn't talk to me was suddenly talking to me, and the conversations got better and better, and the whole thing flipped. And they really go through a lot for a good 10 years, 13 to 23, something like that could just be a very different time where you almost don't recognize your child. They kind of go in and out, and you're like, where'd they go? And what's that anger? And they hate themselves and they hate me. And, oh my God, are we ever going to come out the other side? And I can't speak for every parent, but I'm very, very lucky that you know, 2 out of 3 have come out the other side. And I would even say that even my daughter has come out the other side, even though I can't say that she's checking every box yet that I want her to check. Nevertheless, I see growth and development in her. When you take the long view, one summer I had the misbegotten approach. She was still living at home, of basically doing a seminar every week on a different aspect of trans and why it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a college seminar, and I so did not reach her. I just did not reach her. She conceded a few points, but it just didn't matter. Her approach was still going to be the same going forward because it's what she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And damn it, she was going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all we could do was buy time, which we have done pretty well mostly, although there have been some episodes that I just happened and I can't stop.
You said 2 out of 3 kids are checking the
Yeah.
boxes. Is that how you put it?
No, well, no, the growth. I don't want to use that image. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm mixing things here. Taking the long view, having the faith. If you wait long enough, they'll come back to you. The ways in which you connected when they were children, before adolescence reared its ugly head, its necessary head. I won't say ugly.
Yes, it's necessary head. Mm-hmm.
um, they will circle around. The hormones will slowly calm down. The individuating will occur. And now that they've staked out their separate lives, their separate physical and emotional spaces in which they rule very clearly, they can then, from that position of strength and belief in themselves, come back to you and spend time with you. And I've had the pleasure of that with both of my older children, and to an extent with my daughter in a limited fashion. Definitely, I'm seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. And so, me didactically trying to instruct her didn't work because she was on her mission of individuation.
Mm-hmm.
And many of the experts say, okay, don't frontally try to convince them otherwise, plant seeds. Well, I've tried to do that, but I would say just plant seeds of what being a good person is. I would say just share yourself and your highest aspirations and what it means to be a self-actualizing good person. Values. What are your moral values? What's important to you? And whether it's going to a play, walking in nature, watching and analyzing a movie together, whatever it is, in a relaxed way, not a frontal way, which I did first mistakenly, but in a relaxed, collegial, like, hey, we're two humans going through life. And oh, can you believe what that character did in that TV show? Well, what do you think about that? And here's how I reacted. It's all going in their heads. They don't have to agree with you.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
They just have to enjoy being with you. It's just a different way of being a parent as the years go by.
Well, and what I hear is relate to them as an adult rather
Yeah.
than as, this child that you are still parenting. It's about
Hmm.
relating to them in a different way. And in that more relaxed approach, again, you're communicating trust in their process.
Right.
If you are able to regulate your, and deal with your own emotions and find ways to care for yourself, resource yourself,
Yes. Yes.
so that your child is not bearing the burden of your reaction to the messiness, right? I think is
Yes.
often what is happening.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so now they can do their work. Now they can move through the messy, which is
Hmm.
part of growing up, especially if you've got interesting, complicated children.
Hmm.
Which I love that you bring that
Yeah.
up, that you love
Yeah.
having interested, complicated children. And I would agree that, or I would propose maybe that some of that comes from that foundation you gave them, right? They had the freedom to be interested, complicating kids. And
Hmm.
that is going to make for a little bit of a messier transition into
Hmm.
adulthood,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
being able to flow with that, finding a way to flow with that after
Hmm.
we get smacked in the face of like, what's happening? It's not
Yeah.
supposed to look this way.
Yes. And still communicating the love,
Yes.
having that relationship, but
Yes.
a piece that lately I've been trying to focus on is, in a way, how to warm up and show approval. I'm not always the warmest person. And how to lighten the stakes, take it away from approval and disapproval, and just offer this, baseless love. You don't have to earn my love. You don't
Yeah.
have to perform or get the A or look a certain way, wear the clothes I want you to wear, use the name I want you to use. If you feel my love more strongly, you will love yourself more. And maybe you won't need these extraneous things as much, but you really have to focus on the love. It's not to affect a certain change. Of
Yeah.
course, that's where my mind goes, that good things will come from that. But it's really about the love. They have to bask in your love and warmth and unconnected to any performance review. They're
Oh,
not your
yes.
employees. They're
Right.
not your
Love that. The
employees. We often
performance
think they
review.
are.
Yes. Yes.
No, if they think that you admire them, that you approve of them, I think they'll gain in self-esteem and self-approval.
And I think if they can, it's okay to see their struggle and acknowledge their struggle.
Hmm.
They're doing a hard thing coming of
Yeah.
age in this world. This is not an easy world to come of age in,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
like it, it's kind of a mess out there. you know?
Right. Right.
Um,
I guess what I'm referring to, I'm sorry, I'm still dwelling here. It's
you're
like
okay.
kind of piquing my interest. For a long time, this whole issue, and of course, this was in and out during COVID, and things were a little different during COVID. But it was the elephant in the room, as for many families.
Mhm, mhm.
So when you have this angry back and forth, or, even if you're not, the elephant's still there, there's just something so important to be said for clearing the decks and just working on this loving relationship, just having fun together. It's such a gift.
Mhm, mhm.
That's all I'll say. Yeah,
Well, because
really
as you
important.
said, we don't know who gets hit by a bus tomorrow, frankly.
Right, right,
Yes. And and
right.
and there's something to trusting the process too, that our young humans are they are driven to figure out how to be in the world they live in. and their world is a little different than ours. And so
Hmm.
they're
Oh,
doing their
yeah.
best to figure it out. Yeah. Um, you've been quite modest with this today, but from my perspective, it seems like how your daughter is doing now is very different than how you thought she was doing a year and a half ago. That
Hmm.
she had a different boyfriend back then.
Hmm.
Now she's with somebody,
A healthier relationship,
healthier relationship,
a
somebody
lot
who
of
adores
respect
her.
and love. Yep. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she's working full time, and
Yep.
she's yeah. I could you
She,
say a little
yeah,
bit about how
she's,
she is doing now and what's
yeah,
going well in her life from your
yeah,
perspective?
she's adulting more. A lot of these kids fall into victim mode. I do
Hmm.
believe that this is an expression of a victim culture.
Hmm.
Look at me, I can't do this, I have special needs. And these are kids who I don't think she particularly has any special needs. I think she's just incredibly anxious and came under the influence of kids with issues and just swam in this murky sea, which I'm not discounting. It's where we are. But she has been able to, now that she has goals and she sees her brothers accomplishing certain things and she begins to be more aware of the adult world. She can't be Peter Pan being 14 her whole life. She has started to accomplish things. She takes pride in living more as an adult, um, nurturing and caring for her dog, um, taking responsibility, cooking and cleaning and shopping, adult things, accomplishing things, showing up to work, all good movement. Um,
What about your relationship? How would you describe your
Much
relationship with
warmer,
her?
much warmer. We danced around each other for a while. I think she needed to trust me again after all of the opposition I brought to her for a while, all of the didactic, behavior, the disapproval. So I think it's been almost a healing process, a lot more spontaneity and warmth of just chatting on the phone about anything. I used to, you know, complain to you that, oh, we never talk on the phone. She doesn't call me. She gets off quickly, whatever. And that's not an issue anymore. I've picked up some of her interests just to have a common language, and that's paid off. Um, Something we can always talk about, even if, there's nothing easy to talk about. Um, and it just seems like she's moderating her behavior a little bit, growing up. So we'll see. I mean, part of this, of course, is the big glaring issue, and part of it was just overall mental health and being an adult and growing up.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
on that count, I can say we're really succeeding.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
this can't be the only issue that motivates us. Usually these kids have a whole complex of issues. So if you can kind of go in the back door and work on them being braver and going to a few events or applying to jobs or whatever it is that's their bugaboo that they can't easily stand up to being in social situations. All progress is good progress, to be more mature, more self-sustaining. This is what we hope for them, right?
Hmm. Hmm. And if I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't know that it has to be an issue at all. You know,
The trans thing.
yeah, the
Yeah.
trans thing. I think to really take the
That
oxygen out of
thing.
it, we take
Yeah.
it off the table as an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, something came up recently And it was like a recommendation for something from her. And I read up about it and I was like, oh, this is so triggering to me.
Mm.
And I recognized what I was feeling.
Hmm.
And I said, whoa, don't give it that power. Maybe she meant something different. Maybe this, maybe that. And even if it is what she meant, so what? Don't give the oxygen to it. Don't dwell
Mm.
on it. Don't worry about it. Don't go there. And I
Mm.
was able to sort of brush it out of my mind and move on,
Mm.
which in the past I would have dwelled on that and brought it up to her and asked her and discussed it with my husband, not worth my
Stories,
mental
right?
health.
Yeah, weave in those
Yeah,
stories that
no.
create more pain.
I
And
always
it's
say trouble will find you if it's going to happen. We don't have
mm,
to look for trouble.
mm,
We don't have
mhm,
to interpret these kids that every second it's, every
mhm,
situation is different and there are situations that are very different. But for a kid who's in
mhm,
some kind of holding pattern, let them grow up. Let's see what
mhm,
happens.
mhm. Well, and I hear too, I hear your growth. I hear your capacity to bring some consciousness to that moment, that this thing crossed your path and not too long ago you had would have had a very different
Mhm.
response to it, and it would have snowballed again, right? But
Yeah, right.
instead, you could bring some space to it, give yourself a moment to think about it and to check the meaning you were giving and the power you were giving.
Hmm. Right.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. So, yeah, nice, well done. Um, on your uh, list of questions at the end, you've got, I think it looks like a list of maybe recommendations for parents.
Hmm. Yeah.
Desire. I like this is interesting wording. Desire to live life fully as possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just, it's not a command to live life as fully as possible, but desire to live life as fully. That's interesting wording.
Because I had to find it. I
Mm,
forgot about it. I was
mm,
just swimming in that black kind of hole full of barrels of acid and hurtful things, hurting myself over and over again, dipping back into the acid. Is that a way to treat myself? Or my
punishing yourself?
relationship with my partner? Yeah,
Okay.
uh-huh, maybe. Well, because if I had only done something differently, maybe we wouldn't
Uh-huh.
be in this situation.
So back to that first question about
Right.
are you
The
entitled
regret.
to feel good?
Right,
Interesting.
right,
Okay.
right,
So
right.
something to pay attention to. Do you even desire to live a full,
Yeah.
um, happy life?
I
Okay.
think we should desire that. I think,
Yeah.
and face it, a lot of us were, parents of a certain age, I want to enjoy the rest of my life, whatever
Mm-hmm.
remains. I mean, I'm not 80,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not 40 either. And I want to focus on me. I put in all
Mm-hmm.
those years raising those kids.
Yeah.
I want to stand
Yeah.
back and focus on myself and enjoy it and
Yeah.
not always have this black storm cloud hanging over my head where we're out for dinner and oh yeah, that, or you
Right.
wake up every morning, oh yeah, that.
Uh-huh.
No,
Uh-huh.
no.
Okay. Yeah, so interesting then to even just notice where your desire is. Um, yeah, so it's almost like a different way to measure how you're doing rather than your kid's status,
Hmm.
how are you doing? What is your
Yeah,
desire? Okay.
right. I don't want to desire self-flagellation that gave me something at a certain point, but that's not a good desire, you
Mm.
know?
Well, it's not going to lead to a life fully lived, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
So
right, right.
you've got living in the present.
Yeah,
So,
because we don't know how any of this will turn out. So why assume the worst?
mhm.
Just like part of trusting them, part of just raising children at any age is ascribing the best motivations and assuming the best. In fact, I'll say it's just interpersonal relations, right?
Mm-hmm.
If someone
Mm-hmm.
doesn't smile at you on the street, you can't think, oh, he hates me. You have to say, he just had a tough morning, or, whatever. And we have to think the best of every person, and especially of our children, you know? So living in the present, we have to think that they are doing their best work on this, and things will turn out okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to just live with what we have right now and not jump to conclusions and catastrophize and worry about
And
the future. No, there's
right.
no payoff there. Trouble will find you. You don't have to make any signposts. uh, Enjoy what you've got while you've got it.
Yeah. And I'm hearing too, like, don't, we tend to judge their experience and then
Hmm.
in turn judge ourselves for the
Hmm.
experience that we see our kids having. Then you've got taking care of yourself. Any recommendations? What works for you?
So what works for me is channeling it in different places, whether it's reading challenging books, whether it's making art, whether it's exercising, whether it's having a faith tradition and prayer, or, religious exploration, just something,
Mhm.
something. So you're not just stewing in your own juices all the time. You have to channel it, and, you know, um,
It's also making me think too about the burden that we sometimes put on our kids when our well-being is dependent on
mhm,
how they're doing. That's heavy.
yeah,
And they're gonna shield themselves from that. And I think that can also be one function of a trans identity. So you've got on here, cultivate a lightness, detachment from the small stuff, and sense of humor.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, our family takes life very seriously, and it's a struggle to be more relaxed. It's a goal. Um,
When we take life
yeah,
very seriously, it kind of raises the stakes, don't you think?
right,
Yeah.
right. And of course, I see that more with younger parents, trying to map out the whole path of their children's life, with
Hmm.
extra after school training and tutoring, and they're going to this college, and it all matters so much. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Not at all.
Yeah.
It comes down much more to your particular child's personality and how they move in the world. Um, but we're all scared, so we grasp at these other things.
Mm. Fear
So,
does funny things to our motivation, doesn't it?
right.
And our behavior. When fear is driving the bus, we.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe that's why she's anxious, because the whole world is fearful and anxious. And I just
Mhm.
want to model for her that, you know, it's okay. Life is good. It's going to be okay.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah. It sounds like a pack of cliches in a way, but
They're
they're
cliche
cliches
for a
for a
reason.
reason. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
I love
yeah.
cultivate a lightness. I think that's a beautiful way to say that. Um, and honestly, I don't know that I find anything more comforting than when my family's laughing together. To me, that
Hmm.
was always so comforting. Hmm.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this predicament that we're all in, there's not much heavier than that. It's very heavy. So again, that's part of taking away the oxygen from it, finding other things to laugh about, refocusing, reframing.
I think I
Life
heard
is,
Maggie Goldsmith say, find a way to hold this lightly. And I couldn't agree more with that. If we can, as you put it, right, take the oxygen out of it and not um, escalate it. I think in some ways we
hmm,
escalate it with our fear, as we were talking
yeah,
about earlier in the conversation, we're feeding it, and so
yeah,
so important to diffuse it of its power because
yes,
that frees them to move through what they've got to move through and frees us to get
Right.
back to life. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. In no way am I saying, you know, I have all the answers, but I have to think that this approach can only be helpful.
Has it been helpful for you?
Yes, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, like saved my life helpful.
Mm, mm, okay.
Yeah. Changed our whole family dynamic helpful. Yeah.
Mm, mm. Well, I think that's how we, or that's how I encourage measuring, is paying attention to what's working.
Hmm.
And that's kind of an incomplete thought. Like, working to do what? Is it working to get you back to living more fully? Is it
Well,
working?
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it working to heal relationships? Is it working to increase your trust and faith in your kids and in yourself? So,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Right. And then you're ultimately modeling health for them, mental health, if you're more mentally healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a virtuous loop or whatever they call that.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's the snowball again, right?
yeah,
Yes. Now you're feeding something different. So
right,
it can grow
right, right,
because what we feed will grow bigger.
right, right, right,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, and it's more fun. It's a heck of a lot more fun in the day to day.
I love that you say that. You've been listening to Conversations Along the Way, part of the Stoic Mom Project. If you're interested in connecting with other moms who are seeking to resource themselves and support each other to grow through the most difficult things life will throw at us, we invite you to consider joining us in the SMP Online Community Center. This is a private, vetted community created specifically for moms who share this circumstance. For more information and to express interest in joining, please visit the SMP Community Center tab at stoicmom.substack.com to learn more, or simply fill out the application included in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and always remember, humans have amazing capacity for overcoming adversity and healing, and I'm pretty sure you're human.